All right. What is up, everybody? We are here today to do our build review show. Doing it today at 3 p.m. Eastern. Appreciate you guys tuning in to the altered showtime here, but excited to jump in here. We have a couple names on the list to get reviewed today. And then also a reminder that we do have our regularly scheduled office hours show at 4 p.m. Eastern. So in an hour here. So we're going to knock these out. If anybody tuning in wants to have their build reviewed live on stream, let me know. We do have some open slots here. I think we have 3 people so far at the moment. We usually get to about 5 within the hour here. So anybody tuning in wants to have their build reviewed live on stream, let me know. But with that said, let's jump right in and let's get our first person up here. So let me just take a peek in the Discord. We did have somebody sign up, but I was having trouble finding their build. And Ron, I was having a little bit back and forth with Ron here. Not sure if Ron is tuning in, but Ron, if you are, it's always good to review what you did previously rather than what you did today. So if you did play yesterday, I would highly recommend us checking that out here. And I do have you pulled up. We can always review your stuff more than once as well. So let's go back to yesterday and see if there are any builds here with some lineups. So I'm not seeing any slates starred. So maybe we'll just do Monday. Ron, if you're tuning in here, play some slates over the weekend, and then we can add you to the queue for Monday, and then we'll get you reviewed then. But it's always better to look at what build was, look how your sim ROI was, and then how can we take what you did, make adjustments, and help you to get better on future slates. So let's do that. And we will move to our next person. Raf LP here is going to be our next participant. So let's get Raf up on the screen. Huh, interesting. Try again. Super weird. Don't know why it is not coming back valid. So let me just see if I can get Raf in here. Oh, I know why. My bad. All right. We're good now. So let's go back to the 8-1 slate yesterday, and let's jump in here. So it looks like he did play the 5-game main slate here. Got 150 entries. So let's jump into the contest tab and start looking at what he did. Okay, so this is pretty solid contest selection. Like this is exactly what I want to see. What's so funny is that you just so happened the number of entries here just so happened to equal 150, and I'm like, oh man, this guy just put 150 entries in one contest here. I'm gonna have to talk about spreading out his action into multiple contests, but this looks great. This was a welcome to surprise here. You see all these different single entries, 3 maxes, solid balance, playing a bunch of dime times, quarter jukebox. This is also like a good point to make as well. DraftKings will open up a contest, and then if that contest fills and it's an hour to lock, if it's gonna fill and there's plenty of time, they usually open up a second, a third. So you can see that he has 2 quarter jukeboxes here. He has a 2K, and then he has a 1.5K. So what you can do is enter all of the best contests in the morning, and then rather than finishing your contest entry, just kind of wait, come back later, and then see if more contests open up enter all of those and then enter any remaining dollars you have into, higher stakes contests. But if you wait, you're going to get access to these, respawn contests, as I've heard them called around the industry, where, they fill and then they, come back open. So that's a really good thing to remember. And this is a really good thing to do in general here. So really like to see that. Actually, let's go back to a contest. Let's just pick one here. Yeah, it looks like the biggest contest was the solo shot. So let's go into the solo shot and let's review your. That's great. Let's sort by filter for 20 entries. Sort by sim ROI. Okay, so good news is you're positive sim ROI. Bad news is you're only 4%, right? Top sim ROIs are in the 20-ish% range. So, the question is, okay, hey, Ralph's already doing some of the right things. He's rating out positive. But how do we take him to the next level, right? How do we increase that sim ROI? So let's jump in here and see what your lineups look like. Your sim ROI. So I'm not seeing anything like egregious with the sim average score. Salary looks fine. Lineups aren't duped. So let's come in here and let's see, kind of what your lineup sets look like. Okay. Mostly 4 and 5 stacks. There are 4 3-3 stacks. I would actually like to see how these graded out. So 5-3 negative 7%, 5-2 positive 8, 5-2 positive 15. And like this is something you could do as well, right? Like, hey, where is my negative sim ROI coming from? What lineups are grading out badly? And you can kind of get a sense here, right? Neutral with the 4-2, neutral with the 4-3, 5-1-1-1 graded out really well. And this is a lower salary lineup, right? 48-8. 3-3 grades out positive, 9%. 3-3 grades out really bad, negative 25% on this one. So interesting. The massive difference here in this 3-3 that grades out well. And then this other 3-3 that grades out terribly. Like projected score is really close. Ownership is a little bit higher in the bottom one. Doesn't look that bad. Yet it grades out so different. 4-4, negative 7. 5-1-1-1 grades out really well. 5-3, negative 18. I think this is probably due to like the high ownership across the board. 5-2, slightly negative. 3-3, positive. Really positive. 5-2, good. So I'll say one thing that I'm really seeing here, just kind of scrolling through these, is that some of these lineups with very high sum ownership are grading out really poorly. So like this 169% sum ownership, negative 28%, right? No batter under like 9.5 ownership. And the other thing is that not only are you playing a really chalky lineup, the projected score of the lineup is actually really low as well, low salary. But then you see this other lineup, right? 49.8, a lot of salary, projected score is higher. Some ownership's a little bit lower. Sim average score ends up being a little bit higher, right? I think there was another good example. See, on this 3-3, some ownership is like 111. And then you see this 5-2 with 189, grades out negative, 189, some ownership, negative 18, 123%, grading out positive. It seems like the builder really likes these 5-1-1-1s from the few that I've seen here, that they graded out really, really strongly. This 3-3, 179%. So like, what's the difference between this 3-3, 94 projection, and then this other 3-3, right? The biggest thing to me is like how much ownership is being used. And in the bottom one, it's 179. The other one, it's 153. So you're just getting to some, at least, like lower owned pieces here. And it seems like that's having a pretty big impact with the projections being very, very similar. I know the teams are different, like the players and stuff like that, but it's like what is the builder, liking? And it's really hard to come in here and say like, okay, I should set like a sum ownership rule, because ownership changes so much slate to slate. Like, you might not ever see lineups get to like 189% on like a 12 game slate, but you might see it on like a 5 game slate, right? So it's like, how do you take that rule and apply it, in real time? And like, the only thing I can really think of is to do something where you're in your build, right? And I talk about this. It's like, if you don't have a good baseline to go off of, just trim down your pool. And what I would do is just come in here, if I wanted to try this, right? I don't know if this is actually going to help or not, but you could try stuff for a period of time, for a couple days, a week, and you could see how your sim ROIs are doing. And then you got to say like, okay, do I want to keep doing this, or do we go back to the drawing board? Do we scrap it and do we start over? And that is okay, right? I mean, I'm not going to have all the right answers. I don't expect you guys to have all the right answers. We are trial and erroring, trying to figure out how to get that sim ROI higher, but we're doing it based on what we're reviewing, right? So we're reviewing, we're getting ideas, and then we're implementing those ideas and trying to figure out what is the best path to a higher sim ROI. So what I might try is come in here and say, hey, show me lineups with ownership less than, and then just make up a number, right? So I'm going to start with 150. Now I want to see the impact that it has. So I actually had a really big impact. This 150, it trashed 2,000 lineups. So I'm like, okay, maybe this is too big of an impact. Maybe I just want to trim like 10% of my pool. So then I'm going to bump it, to 160. Okay, 1,200, getting closer, right? So maybe I want to come in here and I want to say, hey, do 170, right? So now this is a lot closer. It's like, hey, we've gotten rid of, 669 lineups out of our 5,000. That's like really close to like 10% here. I could tinker and get it closer, but what you're doing is like, hey, I just kind of want to stay away from and just focus on these set of lineups that don't have as much sum ownership. I don't know how the builder is getting there. I'm not picking an arbitrary number. I'm not saying, hey, I need 160. I'm just, based on today's ownership and how the slate context and how many games, I'm just trimming the highest 10% off, because those seem to be grading out bad. And this is something you could try for a period of time. So that's what I would really recommend. Is something like that. This might end up helping you based on what our review is showing us, right? So that's what I would be doing there. Give that a shot. Okay, some other things here. So it looks like that you built 10 lineups. I'm assuming you have 10 single entries. 3, 6, 9. Yeah. So you did all these together. I think that's good. I think that's fine. It looks like you just picked one contest sim and are using like a trickle down effect for all of your single entry and 3 max. I don't hate that. I think it's okay. It is a time saver. It is, a an okay idea, right? To come in here, pick your, biggest or biggest prize pool, biggest entry, single entry or 3 max, and use that for all of those lineups. I think it's okay, right? Like you could do like a 20 max, like, hey, I'm playing the $4, the $1, the 25 cent. I don't want to set up 3 contest sims. I want to do this a little bit faster. You just pick the $4, you let it, fill for all of the contests. I think that's okay, right? It's not perfect, but having an individual contest sim for each contest is better. But sometimes when you have a really big list, right, it can be really time consuming. So I can understand the need to cut some corners there. Other thing I would say is that, still doing single entry and 3 max, still use mini uniques, right? Spread that risk around. I don't love having batter as like my highest exposure on the day. And, this is like almost like 5x leverage on Charlie Blackmon. I bet you if, you started to increase this mini uniques, that exposure would go down slightly here. So, still get diversified, still, use that even when building a smaller set of lineups here. A little opinionated here with some of these teams. I don't know why or your rhyme or reason. I think it's okay to be opinionated a little bit here. So I'm not going to harp on that too much. But other than that, not seeing anything super bad. Again, you're already positive sim ROI. How do we take it to the next level? Sometimes we got to get, really granular and see what lineups are grading out bad. So like, according to sim, it's not bad to play 3-3s, right? You had some positive 3-3s and then you had some negative 3-3s, right? So mix those up, figure out, try and find those differences. It looks like we did find some differences. So I would say contest selection looks really good. Mess around with like a possible ownership filter here, and then use min unique still when building these diversifier sets. But those would be my big takeaways from checking out your lineups. But overall, good job here. Keep rolling, and you are on the right track. All right. Let's get our next name up here and keep it rolling. Okay, sorry about the stream cutting in and out. I think it's better now, so it should hold here. And then let me just follow up with Ron. Play. All right, so we're gonna wait until Monday to do Ron's set of lineups, and then we are gonna move on to Renegade, reviewing yesterday's MLB main slate. So let's get Renegade up here on the screen. All right. And let's just change slates and change back. Should allow that to update. And let's go back to the main slate and seeing a different number of contests here. So it looks like we're all set. So let's jump into Renegade's lineups and see what we got going on. So first thing, contests. Solid contest mix here, right? Single entries, 3 max. And then what I do like here is that he plays from the ground up, dime time quarter. And then, hey, he doesn't enter the max in the solo shot because it's not within the bankroll parameters. So he just enters, a smaller set here. And I think that's totally fine. So, as you grow your bankroll, as you keep making good decisions, building strong lineups, this number goes from 5 to 10 to 20. And then all of a sudden you're playing the $4 and you're playing 5 lineups, 10 lineups, 20, right? And you're building, you're growing. So this is a very good start. And then as far as reviewing, let's do the quarter jukebox here. And let's go over to users. Okay. Lineups 20, sim ROI. So it looks like Renegade is about neutral here. ROIs in the 10 to 20% range seem achievable. So let's see what we could do to increase that number, right? And at the high ends here with some of these top sim ROIers, seems like they're getting there a couple different ways, right? We see somebody with 100 sim average score. We see someone with 95 average score, right? So it's not to say that, oh, your 94 sim average score is bad. Like, no, there's sets that are very similar to yours grading out really well. So let's see what is going on, and let's see what we can do to learn and increase your set. So first thing that catches my eye here is the low average salary. Your average salary is like 48.9, while a lot of these other sets 49.8, 49.5, 49.5, 49.5. So for some reason you're getting to lower salary sets of lineups. I'm not exactly sure why yet, but we will figure it out. Okay, every lineup at least a 4 stack, with the majority of them being 5 stacks. I think that's good correlation. Stacks look fine. Really interesting that his highest owned stack is tied for the second lowest team total on the slate. So it is a 5-game slate. The smaller the slates get, the more the builder tends to like lower team total teams. I'm surprised to see so much of them. I would be interested to see if you ended up forcing them in. So we'll see that once we get into your build. And let's look at exposure of batters. Okay. So this is something that always worries me a little bit here, and we'll look at the build. But it's like, hey, I'm playing 40% Miami, but then you have like the same exact guys in all of those 40% of your stacks. So always be willing to kind of spread out that batter exposure over a stack. So it's like, the way I see it is like, if you're stacking a team at 40%, then you should probably not own any player or have exposure to any player at that same level. Like, it should always be less, right? If you are getting to all 9 hitters in the lineup, chances are if you're 40% exposed to the team, maybe you should have like 30% exposure max to every batter, because then you're not all in on one piece of a 9-man lineup, right? In baseball, so high variance, a lot of these hitters, their most likely outcome is always going to be 0, right? Jesus Sanchez 30% of the time. And we want to, kind of spread out our risk and get to the full lineup, as opposed to just like hitters 1 through 3, hitters 1 through 4. But we'll see in the build. We'll see how that works out. Oh, God. Oh, this is a head scratcher. So this is like a red flag to me. And I might be the only one who thinks like this, but it's like, hey, when my highest exposure at pitcher is the same as my highest exposure to pitcher is facing my highest exposure to my batters, I do not like that. That is typically a red flag for me. I'm not a big fan of that. It's like, you're kind of all in on one game, and there's not like something to say, like you're like guaranteeing that like half your lineups are dead, right? Because it's like, okay, 10 of them have Charlie Morton, who's facing Miami, and then 8 of them have Miami stacks. and like 90% of your portfolio is all wrapped around the outcome of this one game. And I'm not a huge fan of that. You know, in DFS, it sucks to lose, right? But you are going to lose more than you're going to win. I mean, we've talked about the backtesting project. You know, long-term winning player going to lose 22 to 24 days in a calendar month, right? You're only winning 6 to 8 days in a 30-day span. And it's like, I would do one of two things here. Number one, I would just pick a side. Like, hey, I want to be on this side with the hitters, or I want to be on that side with the batters. Number two is, you know what? I want to be neutrally correlated to this game, and I want to pick us. I don't want either side to be my downfall. So I'm going to effectively match ownership on the entire game. So it's like what I would do is I would put my exposure at pitcher like a max cap to Charlie Morton's ownership. And then I would go and I would do something similar to Miami's batters. So it's like, hey, you know, I want to have 5 to 10% Miami stacks because that's where these pitchers are coming in. And then that's where these batters are coming in. So like 5 to 10% stack for Miami, and then like 35% exposure to Charlie Morton, where it's like, you know, I kind of want both sides because I don't want to lose to these stacks, but I really don't know what side to pick. In that case, you're better off matching ownership, getting leverage somewhere else on the slate. The opposite is like, hey, if I'm going to go with Miami, I'm going to be under on Morton. And then if I'm going to be over on Morton, I'm going to be under on Miami. I think you should either you got to make a conscious decision. Am I going to match across the board, or am I going to pick a side? And I think if you are picking both sides, I think that's wrong. So I would highly recommend going at it that approach. And then guess what? If you're wrong, if you pick a side and you're wrong, it's daily fantasy sports for a reason. You know, you can always load up tomorrow and start new, fresh slate, fresh decisions, all of that. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to pick a side and be wrong. So that would be my recommendations here. All right. Jumping into a build. And we're going to look at this multi-entry build. So Renegade is on the pro plan here. 5,000 lineups. Using an aggregate metric, I think that's good. Using Saber Score, good. Using min uniques, also good, right? You have this data point of your average projection across your set for your min uniques. Solid work there. Highest exposures are to pitchers. No major adjustments in the min and max exposure columns from what I can see here. So the only thing he did here is it looks like he did end up capping Miami here. Why did we get to so much Miami? It must be from the single entry set. Or it's possible we're looking at 45, but I'm not seeing a ton of Miami exposure here. So maybe he made some adjustments like afterwards and we're not seeing them. But what we saw in the lineups, at least for those lineups, for the 20 that we were looking at was a lot different. And you know, Gators, like I was getting a lot of Miami as well. It's okay to get a lot of Miami, right? But you shouldn't have a lot of Miami and a lot of Charlie Morton. You should kind of have one or the other, right? Or you should be neutral on both. Like that's kind of the point I'm making. I think that there were probably just a lot of lineups in that 20 max that we were looking at that were pitted against each other on these very opposite end of the spectrum outcomes that led to the neutral sim ROI or the low sim ROI, as opposed to, being up higher in that 10 to 20% range. So aside from that, not seeing anything wrong here. I think you're doing a lot of the right things in the actual build. So I think this is all good, what we're seeing here. I don't think he did anything wrong in the build. I would just say, I think that the low sim ROI kind of came from having your lineups pitted against each other so drastically. So think about that a little bit. But sim average score looked good. I think that you got the low salary lineups probably came from those Miami lineups. I didn't see anything here. I think 48K is fine, especially on a smaller slate. None of these rules like active. So all's good there. So I'd say that is probably my biggest takeaway. I don't think you did a lot anything wrong in the build here. This all looks really good, but just think about that a little bit more when you're building your lineups. All right. Ralph said I'm a little behind because of a phone call, but my exposure caps were just because of the weather. Wanted to limit my risk if the games didn't play. Yeah, that's probably like one of the hardest things to do in these reviews is like remember the slate context or be conscious of like weather decisions and stuff like that. But I think some small exposure caps, here and there, I think those are always okay. So I'm never going to say that, those are wrong or you shouldn't do them or et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's fine. But all right, we are caught up with our users who wanted their builds reviewed today. So hope you guys found that advice useful here. Again, I do not know everything about DFS, and I am always open to being, challenged in some of my viewpoints here. I do try to give you guys the best advice I can, and help you guys out as much as I can. I'm always open to, starting a conversation, having a back and forth about anything that I bring up here, and so I just want to give you guys the best advice that I have available in the moment, right? Kind of, talking on the fly, looking on the fly. I don't review these prior because I want to give you guys my like raw thoughts and opinions. So hope that helps you guys out. Our next build review show will be Monday at probably 3 p.m. Eastern on Monday here. I'll confirm that and I'll get it up and I'll let you guys know about it. But we have office hours coming up here in about 25 minutes. So hope to see you all there. And until then, take care. Good luck. Thanks. Bye.